In this video, we will talk about creating a form, creating a lease form in particular. To do that, you're going to click on Company and then Setup and then Form Setup. So again, that's Company, Setup, Form Setup. It's very important that you edit the lease that is in this system. If you create a lease that's not part of this default list, it will not be accessible during the move-in by default. For example, we want to highlight lease number 1. That is the default lease. If we created a lease that was called My Lease, for example, SiteLink is not looking for My Lease. It's looking for lease number 1. So that's the one you want to edit. The next thing you may notice is that we have lease number 1 through 6. Why do we have 6 different leases? And that is because some customers will have different leases for different types of units. For example, you may have a lease for your standard self-storage units. You might have a different lease for RV parking. You may have a different lease for climate control. If you do, edit a different lease. You have up to 6 for the respective type that you'd want to use. And then there's a screen called Unit Types where you can associate the given lease to the given unit type. Most people are going to have one lease, so we're going to edit lease number 1. When we highlight lease number 1, we're going to click Edit on the right hand side. A message is going to pop up and it's going to say, which type of form would you like to edit? Edit HTML form or edit Rtf form? The difference is that the Rtf form is an older version. It's our standard version of a form. There's not that there's anything wrong with that. It's basically like Notepad, like Word, where you can certainly have your information in there, along with the keywords that are going to bring up specific information. The Edit HTML form gives you some more options in terms of having a high resolution image if you want to have one, which would be your logo, or if you wanted to have a clickable link for an email, for example, if you were going to email a lease, then editing the HTML form would be the way to go. So in this case, I'm going to click Edit HTML form. Once you come into this form, once you come into lease number 1, you're going to notice that there's already a default form that's there. What I tell people to do is move the form down. I'm clicking on the Enter button. I'm moving it all the way down and keep it there briefly. Above the default form that is there, you're going to type in the form, the verbiage that you want to see. Now maybe you have this in a Word document. If you do, from a previous software, from a previous instance, you could copy and paste that information that you had into a Word document into this particular screen. Or I could just type it. So for example, I'm just going to write, this is my lease, for example. And we could type it all out. Now the reason why I suggest having the rental agreement below is so that once you have your lease, all the verbiage put in, the areas that you have left blank, for example, the lease date, the rent, the tenant's name, those things that are specific to that given individual that you normally would have wrote in by hand, that's now going to be entered with what we call keywords. Same thing as saying mail merge fields. If you want to see what those keywords are, you can go up here to Insert at the top of the form and click Keyword, and it'll give you a whole list. And you can print out this list. There's a print button here, and you can see all kinds of different keywords and what they represent. For some people, at least when they're initially starting with SiteLink, it can be a little overwhelming to see this large list of keywords. What does each one mean? Well, if you start to come down through the default rental agreement, the majority of those keywords make sense. So for example, site name. This represents the name of your site. So if you wrote, this is my lease for site name, instead of having to hard code the name of your site, I could have copied and pasted this keyword. This is my lease for site name. And it would populate whatever your site name is. And that premise is the same for everything. So as we scroll down, as we continue to put in our verbiage, I come here and I say, for example, I want to put in the tenant name or the street address and so on. The vast majority of the keywords, of the information that you're going to have in your lease that has your specific verbiage, you're going to find those majority of those keywords in this default lease. So you go through and you pick and choose the keywords that would work for your lease. And once you're done, come to this part of the lease, highlight it, and backspace it, get rid of it so that all that's left on this form is your verbiage and the keywords that represent what you want to have displayed. If you don't see the keyword that you want in the default form that was here, of course, again, go up to Insert Keyword and find the keyword that you want and double click on it. For example, I'm just going to randomly choose one here that says employee name. I can click on employee name, there it is. Or if you have questions, of course, call us in technical support and we can certainly help you with what keywords represent. I find this is the best and easiest way to initially create a form. It takes time. It takes time to type it all in manually, but if right now you have pre-printed forms, number one, you're having to pay for that, and number two, you're having to handwrite in all that information. It takes a lot of time. So it's a big time saver to have this lease that can be generated from SiteLink and can be printed out automatically throughout the move-in process.